so that we can post this online afterwards. And I'm not going to repeat that first part. I'm just going to keep going. Sorry about that. Okay. So if you're not familiar with the Inland Northwest chapter of the Project Management Institute, I wanted to share with you some of our mission and objectives. We're here to support all project managers in the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area. We just added Northern Idaho to our chapter. And we provide educational and networking opportunities. We're really here for you if you need something. You can reach out to us via our website. We also have a LinkedIn group and a Facebook page. We're still working on figuring out what our role should be for our members during the pandemic. So if you have any ideas and want to reach out, we're happy to hear them, and we're happy to help in any way we can. Who am I? I'm Shauna Ernst. I'm the Vice President of Operations for the chapter. I'm also involved in the project management community practice for city and county. I worked for Spokane County for a really long time until a year ago, where I transitioned to the Spokane Police Department. I am their IT manager. Okay, so who are you? Welcome. We can see your names in the participant window, but let's learn a little bit more about you. So if you'll open up the chat menu and just give us a brief intro. What do you do for work? Are you a project manager? Are you a program manager? Just really short and sweet. And this is an example of a quick intro that you can use in your own virtual meetings. With a group this large, since there's 100 people registered, it's recommended to use the chat window, not voice or video. But if you have a smaller group, you can actually do this all with people's video cameras turned on. I've disabled that for bandwidth concerns, but usually it's encouraged to do video. And as a leader of the meeting, to help facilitate, it's helpful for you to say, okay, person A is up front, followed by person B, so that you give people time to prep before they're just put on the spot. Technically an icebreaker. This is just an intro. And we'll do an icebreaker next. I'm just looking at seeing all the names coming through. It looks like we got a lot of project managers. That is fantastic. So welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to attend this session. Awesome. Tons of project managers. Great. Okay. So I'm going to move on to an icebreaker. We'll talk more about icebreakers for meetings a little bit later, but let's run through one as a group now. So what you're going to do is in the chat menu, type, but don't send just yet, the answer to one of these prompts related to the current pandemic. So basically finish these sentences, pick which one you want to finish. So if only, it makes me, I have to, or when all is said and done. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of time to type, and then we'll all hit send at the same time, and I'm going to do this too. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple more moments to type. Okay, and then go ahead and hit send. Get those thoughts into the chat window. So this icebreaker is supposed to help you kind of relieve some of that stress by expressing what's going on in your mind about the pandemic. And it's something that you can try out with your teams. You can encourage people, like if it feels overwhelming to see everyone else's anxieties, they don't have to read through all of this. But the goal is to make us all realize that we're all in this together. We're all going through similar things. And then just a couple things that I'm seeing is people are expressing, you know, that they're anxious, that they're grateful for their jobs, grateful from home. lots of good thoughts there. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to go ahead and see if someone's unmuted and fix that. Okay. If you are unmuted, please make sure to stay on mute because it makes it easier for people to hear. Okay. So moving on, that was great. Thank you for taking the time to do that. So let's talk about grief. And I know this is not the funnest thing to talk about, but I really like this quote. This is from a Harvard Business Review article regarding the pandemic. And the article is called "That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief." And I will share out all of the materials I used for this presentation so you can read them in more detail if you want. In the article, they interviewed David Kessler, and David Kessler is an expert in grief, and he's worked for ER rooms. He's managed crises like this, not exactly like this, but similar to this before, and he's written books about grief. He describes how our loss of normal is causing us to grieve, and then talks about naming that feeling as grief helps us to process it and move past it. This is unprecedented, as we all know, and it's okay for all of us to be struggling right now. So from the same article, Kessler talks about 6 stages of grief, and he actually added the 6th stage. They used to only acknowledge 5, but he added that last one. So the stages, and I'm sure you can relate to some of this, denial, this won't affect us. This is only in China. It's not going to come to America. Or this is only in Seattle. We're fine in Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. Anger, you're making me stay home. I can't go out and do my activities. I can't see my loved ones. Bargaining, okay, I'll play ball, but how long is this really going to last? Sadness, feeling like you don't know when this is going to be over, wanting to see your friends and family members and not being able to. Acceptance, that's really where a lot of the power is an acceptance that you have to figure out how to proceed. You start washing your hands, you start wearing a mask, or washing your hands more, sorry. Start wearing a mask, do the social distancing thing. And then meaning, which is the last one, and we'll talk a lot more about meaning. What have you come to appreciate more during this crisis? What did you get out of this experience? So in the chat, how are you feeling right now? Which stage do you feel like you're at? Personally, I feel like I jump between bargaining and acceptance. I can accept some stuff, like I'm okay with closures through the end of the month. I don't know what I'm going to do if we go past that. Then I get back to bargaining and trying to negotiate my way out of something I can't negotiate, right? Lots of people are at acceptance. That's awesome. You guys are great. And for those of you who are saying bargaining or sadness, that's great too. We all move through things at different times. One thing to note about this is that you don't go through these stages in order, and you can get to acceptance and go back to anger. Like, it's okay. And whatever you're at is where you're at. Okay. Anxiety. So anxiety is caused by anticipatory grief. So that's when you're thinking about the future, you're imagining bad things happening, it kind of circles around in your head. So as project managers, we're trained to do that, right? We're trained to be forward thinking. We create our work breakdown structures. We plan things out. We're supposed to do risk management and risk mitigation. So like, we intentionally think about bad stuff that's going to happen to try to stop it. And that is great. But at this time, when we don't have a lot of control, that can be really stressful and affect our mental health. It's hard to be an effective leader if we're feeling so much anxiety. So what can we do? So we can try to calm down and come into the present. This could be really simple. Breathing exercises, naming things in the room, focusing on what you can control, like your actions instead of what you can't control. And then a couple other tips, like if you're having trouble sleeping, you could try taking a walk, reading a book on paper, not on a screen. And then they even suggested, brushing your teeth to have kind of a Pavlovian response that if that's something you do every night before bed, that'll make you feel more tired. We're going to talk a lot about compassion in the leadership section next, but I just wanted to talk about how everybody is feeling grief right now, but it manifests itself in different ways for different people. So if someone on your team or a colleague is usually kind but gets snippy with you, it helps to try to remember that this isn't who they are all the time, that they're going through a lot of stress and anxiety. I've seen this with people that I work with at the city. You know, we're trying to keep the public informed and safe and the city running, and it's tough, and people are getting a little short with each other, but that's okay. You know, as long as it stays respectful, you can understand when someone's a little more curt than usual. And the last part of this is patience. So be patient with yourself. If you name the feelings and let yourself feel them, they're going to pass and you'll be able to move on and be more productive. And then a big part of this is to don't judge your own feelings. So I am really, really bad about this. I often think I have it bad, and then I feel guilty for feeling bad. So like I have a cousin who works in the restaurant industry, and she has 6 kids. And so when I feel like I've had a tough day, or I'm sick of telecommuting, or I'm worried about the future, I think of her, and then I feel bad for my own feelings. But that's not really helpful, right? It's okay for me to be upset. It's okay for me to feel sad, and let myself have that. I don't need to like guilt myself out of my own feelings. Okay, so next up, it starts with you. So as leaders, we tend to prioritize our teams over ourselves. What are you doing to take care of yourself? And so if you want to just put some ideas into the chat, things that you're doing to take care of yourself that you could share with the other people. Awesome. So we're seeing running, exercise, gardening, chocolate. That's a good one. Consistent meal times. I really like that. Like it's hard right now with people at home. You kind of get out of your routine. Walks outside, hobbies. That's all really good. Okay. Thank you. So self-care doesn't stop at home. It can extend to the office or the home office. Some things to keep in mind are to be flexible and ask for help. You don't have to have all the answers. So there's lots of resources out there. A lot of articles have a lot of sites have lifted their paywall for articles. So you can read a ton of stuff on Harvard Business Review right now about how to manage during the pandemic, and they don't charge you for them. Same with newspapers. Somebody has already come up with some of these solutions. You just have to ask. Be real. Let your team know when you're having a hard time. They're going to appreciate your authenticity. That is really important. Nobody likes someone who's fake. And then find purpose. So back to meaning. If you identify what's meaningful in the work you're doing right now, it's going to help you. One of my favorite quotes is from Viktor Frankl. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, about transcending the experience of being in a concentration camp. And he said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, only by lack of meaning and purpose. So you can get through anything if you feel like you have some meaning or purpose out of the situation. And I think for a lot of people, that's work, right? That's what we do. We run these projects, we bring value to our industry, and that gives us that sense of meaning. So I'm going to move on to focusing more on your team. So this chart is from a different Harvard Business Review article. and it's about keeping teams motivated during this time. So they found that people working at home are less motivated than people in the office. So as you can see from the chart, folks who are forced to work from home are the least motivated at all. So if you have a choice on where to work, you're going to be more motivated than if you have no choice. And a lot of us right now have no choice. We're stuck working from home. And that is actually the least motivated category of all. So it can be tempting right now to implement some accountability controls to make sure people are doing their jobs and they're not slacking. You still have work to get done and projects to deliver, right? But it's not the right time to do that. So adding strict policies and procedures is going to increase your team's stress and demotivate them even more. So what can you do instead of adding those accountability controls to make sure that you're still getting work done? Well, you can show some empathy. So you can offer extra support, push back deadlines when possible, help ensure that everyone has adequate technology to do their jobs, and be understanding when kids interrupt video meetings. In my case, it's not kids, it's two really, really obnoxious beagles. So I actually dragged myself into the office today so that you guys didn't have to hear them howling in the background. If you haven't seen this video, it's really funny. Oops, there we go.
Sands in the region to the relations with the North Bay chain. I would be surprised if they do.
Okay. So if you joined just on audio, that was a BBC reporter trying to do his job from home, and his toddler comes waltzing in, and then his baby wheels herself in, and his wife has to drag them back out. It's pretty funny. So after showing people some empathy, you can meet people where they are. This kind of goes hand in hand with empathy. One of my colleagues recently said that she's most concerned about her team members who live alone because they're so isolated. And to get past that, she actually started devising team projects to give them a reason to collaborate and talk, and set up some meetings where they're video chatting just to help reduce that isolation. Offer recognition freely. So nearly 80% of people who quit their jobs cited lack of recognition as one of the main reasons. So recognition can take lots of forms. You can do public or private praise. You can also invest in their personal development. Providing training right now is a great time to do that, and it makes people feel like you care about them. So I'm showing a quick screenshot from my team. We're using Microsoft Teams pretty extensively right now. And we've got this chat thread that we all bounce in and out of every day. And so when someone accomplishes a goal, we make sure to celebrate, we post about it. My team happens to really like GIFs. So there's lots of GIFs out there, but you don't have to do it the same way. You can find something that feels organic for your team. And this is a good skill to develop now because you can use it going forward when we are past this crisis too. It's especially important when people are so isolated, but it'll be a good thing to do going forward. Practice compassion. So the prior examples are pretty simple things to work on. But if you really want to grow your leadership skills, there's another Harvard Business Review article on it's a compassionate leadership assessment. It's free on their website. I posted the link. And the screenshot on the right of this on this page is from my own assessment. So you take the assessment and then you get feedback immediately on what you can do to improve. So these are the things that I need to be working on for my own leadership skills. And again, working on these skills now it's really important, but it's important going forward too. So it's not just pandemic centric. Okay, again, meaning. So the most important thing you can do out of this whole section on compassion is provide your team with meaning. I really like this quote from the article. If you want your teams to be engaged in their work, you have to make their work engaging. You can see in the chart that when people are given meaningful problems to solve or are allowed to experiment with new solutions, their engagement goes way up and compensates for the fact that they're stuck at home. So, do you have a way to give your teams more challenging and meaningful work? Can you make sure that they fully understand the value that they're bringing to your project or your organization or your community? So I'm fortunate on this front because my team knows that the work they do directly benefits public safety since we work for a police department. But I would bet that you can all tie the work you're doing to the greater good in some way if you think about it. So you're either, helping a business stay afloat, helping people manage their finances, whatever you're doing, there's some greater good in it. And even the smallest task can be related back to that meaning so that your team members feel like they're contributing something valuable and not just doing busy work. Okay. And then the authors of that same article talk about developing a meeting cycle for your teams. So they talk about the importance of creating a rhythm and a routine. Just like we talked earlier about self-care, and a lot of you said that you're developing a routine for yourself. It's important for your teams as well. So they suggest that on Mondays, you hold kind of like a weekly scrum to talk about the impact of the last week. What do you have going on this week, and how can you help each other? And then Tuesday through Thursday, having individual meetings with your team members, helping to motivate them, help them focus on how to tackle challenges that are a slight stretch, because you want to encourage them to grow. That helps them find that purpose and meaning and keep their motivation up so that they are contributing to the team. And then on Friday, focus on reflection, showcase and gather input on the experiments of the week. So you kind of just do a review. A few things I read all echoed that over communicating right now is really important. You want to touch base with people, you want to see how they're doing, help motivate them to keep going, make sure everybody's okay. Okay, so the last little part here, we'll talk about some practical tips for meeting management. We're going to go through some icebreakers, then meeting norms, agendas, your presence, and some meeting platforms. So remember that a web-based meeting is not the same as in person. You're going to have to alter how you do things to be more effective. Icebreakers. So we did that first one. That was the COVID chat check-in, where you give prompts and people fill in the blank. Some other things that you can do are just ask some check-in questions just to see how people are doing. And some examples are, what are you grateful for today? How are you getting outside? What's a small blessing in the middle of this situation? There's also the spectrogram. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's a method where you have team members rate something by holding up their fingers. So that can be really fun and lighthearted. I used a silly example here, like how much did you love Tiger King documentary? If you haven't seen it, it's nutso. But you actually can do this on video chat. It'll encourage your team members to turn on their cameras, and then they hold up fingers to rate something. And then they can share a photo from their camera or a COVID meme. Obviously, you want those to be work appropriate, but that can be pretty fun too. My team likes to share those animated GIFs. Do you guys have any icebreakers that you want to share with the group? I'm seeing Caitlin said they've been doing virtual happy hours and played a game virtually. That's pretty awesome. And then a fun photo Friday to post a pic or virtual background on Zoom. Anybody have anything else? Any fun icebreakers you're doing with your team? Someone said Elizabeth said song of the day. That's a great one. It's a really good idea. And then Ashton said virtual coffee breaks. Awesome. Okay. That's great. Thank you all. Okay, so meeting norms. So one thing that you can do to help facilitate right now is to co-create with your team meeting norms. So come up with some agreed upon quote unquote rules that you're all going to follow during these meetings. The most important is probably to agree on that technology platform that's accessible to everyone. You want to make sure that it meets the needs of your entire team, and think about things like if someone has a visual issue or a hearing issue, you may need to adjust. If someone lives out in the boonies and doesn't have good internet, you may need to adjust. You want to keep those things in mind because you want to be inclusive. Test the tech ahead of meetings is another example of a norm you could establish. Creating a lineup to make sure that everyone gets to speak. So that could be as simple as an alphabetized list that you always go down that list and make sure everyone gets to talk. City IT leadership has a daily scrum, and we do that. So we just round robin the whole group. Everybody gets a chance to talk about what's going on with them and what's important to them. And we do a pretty good job of making sure that we're talking about work, but also personal stuff too. So people are pretty open about, I'm having a hard time today, and getting more personal than we normally would. Using the mute button is important, especially when we have a big group like today. Using your chat or speaking up if you have something you need to say. Don't just be silent on these calls. And then designating some rotating roles and preparing agendas ahead of time. Those are all things that you could agree upon. It's recommended that you pick maybe 6 things and don't make the list too long. You don't want it to feel like a chore to get through a meeting. There is a meeting design checklist on the right-hand side. You could steal some of those ideas, but I wouldn't recommend stealing them all because it's a little, it feels a little bureaucratic, I guess. I just noticed Ken said to give people an extra few seconds to unmute, that he always fumbles getting off of mute. I do the same thing, and then people think you're not paying attention when you are. So I like that call out. Thanks, Ken. Okay, so meeting agendas. Agendas are always important, but even more so virtually. I help with a large meeting every other week, and we just started doing this via WebEx. So what I did was I prepared a standard agenda to send out, but also a speaker notes version so that everybody who has to talk has little notes about the transitions and talking points. So they kind of know how long something's going to take beforehand when they're queued up to make it a little bit easier. So if you look at that screenshot on the right, you can see that that first item has a note about transitioning the screen to a different team member so that the person who's speaking knows that the next person up is Nick and that they're going to start sharing their screen. I also met with Nick, that team member, ahead of time to make sure he could share his screen to do the demo. And he took the time to prepare some screenshots in case the demo failed. So that was really important. You want to, tech works a lot of the time, but with so many people using these systems, bandwidth has been an issue, and you can always experience some flakiness. I also try to make a point of starting large meetings 10 minutes early so everyone has a chance to join, make sure their tech's working. That's important if you're in charge of something. Rehearsing the meeting ahead of time is great, but it's not always possible. So at a minimum, make sure that people who can share their screen, that who need to share their screen can do so. Okay, so virtual meetings are your chance to feel like you're in the same room as your team. Since we have a large group, I've kept cameras off because of bandwidth issues, but in a smaller group, you really want to use your camera. And here are some basic tips. Look at your camera. So this one's hard because you're going to want to look at the video of the people but it's better when you're talking if you're looking at the camera, because then to the other people in the room, it looks like you're making eye contact. It's really tricky to do that. I struggle with that, but that's something I've been practicing. You want to use the same voice you'd use in a large room. You still want to have that same kind of presence. Don't get mousy just because you've got a microphone. Frame yourself wisely. I've got a video here all about that. And then be present. Avoid distractions. Not a good time to multitask. Okay, and then I'm going to play this video for you. It's about 4 minutes. Sorry, guys. Can you hear it now? Okay, so it sounds like the video audio is not working great for everybody, so I will just skip that video, but when I send the slides out, you can watch it on your own. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna get past it real quick. It'll let me. Okay, there we go. All right. Sorry about that. You can watch it later. It's worth the time. Okay. So platforms. This is really the last section that I've got. There are a lot of different conferencing platforms available. Most important thing to do is find something that fits the need of your team, but keep security in mind. So best practices for security are to be able to password protect your meetings. Don't let people join before the host joins. You can lock down the meeting after everyone's arrived so that new attendees can't join. That I obviously couldn't do that today with so many people, but if I know I'm meeting with 5 people, it's pretty easy to lock it down afterwards. Turn off participant screen sharing, especially with a group where you don't know everybody. Avoid file sharing. There's just better ways to share files than within a video conference. Remove disruptive attendees. That can be a little bit hard, but if you see someone jump on that you don't know and they're causing issues, go ahead and kick them out if you need to. And then check for security updates because you want to make sure you're not getting any viruses from the software. Hackers are always looking for holes. So the photos on the right-hand side are Zoom at the top, which I personally don't advise for business purposes. I do use it for a weekly guitar lesson I take. My teacher does that via Zoom. It's straightforward, but there's some security issues I'm going to cover in just a sec. Middle photo is WebEx, which we're using right now. It's pretty straightforward. It has full end-to-end encryption, so your meeting is secure and private. Easy to use. There's an app for Android and iPhone, and you can install a plugin with Outlook so that you can add WebEx to any calendar meeting. We're using this at work pretty much across the board. And then the bottom photo is Teams, which I showed you a screenshot from my Teams already. We use it all the time. It also has encryption. It also has an Outlook plugin. I've had a little bit of a performance issue with it on big calls, but for one-on-ones or with a smaller group, it's been fantastic. And it's integrated into that chat app. So if your team starts using the chat extensively, it's really easy to add the video calls. So Zoom's been under fire for security issues if you haven't already heard. So they've had some substandard encryption that has been found to be very vulnerable. It's recommended not to use it for business or government use. If you use it for personal use, that's cool, but you want to make sure to password protect your meeting and avoid Zoom bombing. which is basically where somebody decides to join a random meeting. So they find a meeting code, they pop into your meeting and cause a ruckus. So that's where password protection, kicking people out may be the best thing that you can do. Someone asked if I know if you can have more than 4 folks on the chat screen in Teams. No, you can't. It's 4 at a time right now. I know that they're working on that and adding some more people. Okay, so that is what I had prepped. We're a little short because that video was supposed to take up more time. Sorry about that. Does anybody have any questions? And feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute. We'll just have to be cognizant that we have lots of people, so try not to talk over each other. Rachel said Teams is expected to go to 9 simultaneous videos by the end of April. That's awesome. Thank you. I wasn't sure how many. Okay, I'm just waiting for any further questions. I've got my contact info on the screen if you think of anything. What I'm going to do after this is, as soon as the recording is uploaded, I will share out a recording of this, plus the slides and the sources. I'm also going to include a survey. After the end of all of our PMI events, we like to do a survey because we really care about your feedback. We're always trying to improve and get better. Okay, well, if that is it, I enjoy the 20 minutes you just saved, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for coming.